Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart. Since 2010, the most listened to radio show in the nonprofit sector dedicated to helping your charity succeed. It's no secret that combining online and offline techniques is the key to fundraising success, and practical nonprofit management advice is what you need. The Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart is the perfect landing point to learn from top experts around the world who provide advice you can use. Ted Hart is without a doubt one of the foremost nonprofit thought leaders. Also a successful author, his books range from successful online fundraising to expert nonprofit management. Guests on the Nonprofit Coach are leaders in their field who share their insider tips and trade secrets in a conversational style both the experienced and novice will benefit from. Ted lectures around the world, but now he's here for you. From the latest in charity news, technology, fundraising, and social networking, Ted and his guests help you and your organization move to greater levels of efficiency and fundraising success. This is a live call-in show. Add your voice by calling 347-324-3080. After the show, you can find all our podcasts at tedhart.com. Click on the radio links. Don't forget to dial 347-324-3080. Now, welcome the host of the Nonprofit Coach, Ted Hart.
And welcome here to the latest edition of the Nonprofit Coach. Thank you so much for joining us today on our big 8th anniversary show. For those of you who are familiar with our show format, we're sort of dispensing with page one news because we've got the best of the best experts who are joining us today here on the show. We do want to encourage you, if you would like to call in to 347-324-3080 to ask any questions. Thank you, Carol, for the happy birthday anniversary notice over at Facebook. We are also live casting at facebook.com/Ted Hart. So since it is our 8th anniversary, let's have a little bit of celebratory music. And happy birthday to the Nonprofit Coach. And it's my pleasure to welcome here live Diane Peach, who does not often join us here on the Nonprofit Coach, but she is our producer. And everyone who's going to be joining us as a guest on the show today certainly knows Diane Peach because she is the one who puts all of this together. Diane, hard to believe our big 8th anniversary show today.
Thank you for having me on, Ted.
Well, it's thank you for all of your help.
I really enjoy working there.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I really enjoy doing the show. You and I have been together for way longer than 8 years, but the show started 8 years ago, and you put me in charge of it, and I really have enjoyed getting to know everybody and working with everybody, and we certainly have some experts that have been on the show year after year, and we've been fortunate to have them such a loyal friends of the show.
And providing that expert advice to our listeners each and every month. We're here live on the Nonprofit Coach. And of course, all of our shows are available at tedhart.com, and those are available free of charge. And the concept behind the show, Diane, as you know, is that we want to bring to nonprofit organizations, both large and small, the very best advice, updated news, the faces of the nonprofit sector, so that we can collectively be successful. And in many cases, we try to bring some of the most expensive consultants who many small nonprofits might not be able to afford. They come here on the show and they provide us with their very best advice. So, Diane, again, thank you for doing all of the legwork and reaching out, building those relationships, and making sure that each show here on the Nonprofit Coach does have the very best guesses. But I wanted to just give a shout out to you for all the hard work that you've put into making this show such a staple in the nonprofit sector, and you're often the one who's always reminding me we need to keep the show going because there are so many nonprofits who do rely on the expertise. So, Diane Peach, thank you very much for all the time and effort you put into this.
Well, you're welcome, and you're right. There's so much information and so many experts that normally you couldn't get access to readily, and they come on the show and they're great friends of yours and great friends of the show, and it's just invaluable information. So congratulations on 8 years, Ted. You did a great job, and I'm proud of you.
Well, we embark on our ninth year, and I know, Diane, you're working on filling out the schedule. You and I put together the calendar for the next year just yesterday, so I'm excited about that. And Diane, since you're with us before you have to go, you know who was our very first guest on the show 8 years ago, and he's going to be our next guest here. So who is that?
Well, we have Mark Sutton on the show, and he's a great friend of the show. He was our very first guest way back when, and he has been a guest on every single anniversary show since, and it wouldn't be the same without him. So we have him topping off the hour, starting the hour now, again this year, and hopefully we'll have him on again next year. So Mark Sutton is here with us.
Great. Well, Diane, thank you for that intro.
Thanks, Diane. And
go ahead. Mark Sutton is here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Diane, and Ted. Congratulations. It's great to be back. And Diane, hopefully I take that as an invitation again for number 9 next year. But I don't want to jump the gun. But it's been wonderful being part of this throughout the years, and I can't believe how much has happened and changed, and Ted, how much you've been sort of a leader in that change.
Well, thank you, and Diane, thank you for joining.
We usually have Mark.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We usually have Mark on at least one other time during the year to update us on Frontstream and what's going on and all of the great things they're doing there. So we usually have him on in the fall. So we'll have him on again before the winter hiatus, I'm sure, because that's what we usually do. But yes, you are definitely invited to be our guest on the 9th anniversary show.
A year from now. So, Diane, thank you again for jumping in here, and thank you for making this 8th anniversary show possible. Mark, let's get right into it. And you said something I just want to ask you to explore, and that is so much has changed in the 8 years of the Nonprofit Coach Show. Give some color to that. You've also been in the industry longer than that, but as Diane just mentioned, you were the very first guest on the very first show 8 years ago. So tell us, how would you describe how the industry has changed?
Well, it's really interesting. I know that we've talked about a lot of things on this show over the years, and I remember getting started, with online fundraising, back in 2003, and that's where you and I first met. And I recall at that time it was, the challenge was simply getting people comfortable with putting a credit card onto the computer, and it was daunting for some, and I think everybody is kind of well kind of down the road with that right now. But then over the last few years since we've been talking on this show, Ted, a lot of what we've talked about has been the emergence of mobile technology, and then also social media as well. And I see kind of an evolution with mobile, just to kind of go back to that. But we saw years ago when we were talking about this on the show, where we were citing stats like 15%, 25% of the traffic was mobile, and now I think what we're seeing regularly across many of the nonprofits that we work with, they're having upwards of 50, 60, 70% of the traffic in some cases that they're seeing is mobile. And I think one of the things to keep an eye on really as we go forward is mobile payments for organizations, and things such as Apple Pay and Venmo and some of these other types where it's great that people have come and visited your site or responded to an email with a mobile device, but then that next step is helping them either register for an event or sign up. And it's that next level of engagement that I think is very interesting right now. Social media has also been another big driver as well. And I just, as we were talking about before the conference, before the show, I just got back from both N10 and AFP, and data and analytics seem to be a very prevalent topic on the mind of many at the conference. Mm-hmm. And I think just another aspect that is starting to really drive, I think it's flowing out of kind of a more quantitative approach that people are now taking to the engagement because the numbers are there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and data, of course, is important to I think many businesses, as you know, and one of the things that we've been promoting here on this show is, for nonprofit organizations to become more purposeful in their planning by identifying the data that is relevant to their industry, certainly to be utilizing the data that oftentimes they have right in front of them regarding their donors. But what a lot of organizations had sort of fallen into, and hopefully we're being successful in helping charities sort of break out of this, is that their fundraising has been sort of on the same calendar. Sort of it's time to do whatever it is that they have been doing in the past, but yet the donors have moved on almost faster than many nonprofit organizations have in their expectation of websites, their expectation of digital, their expectation of mobile. And the issue is, I think, for a lot of nonprofits is, this is not new technology. There are new techniques and new ways to utilize the technology, but are you pulling together all the various tools that relate to the lives of your donors? The frameworks and the websites that they're used to using. Do you have a presence there? What is your strategy? And as you said, are you providing multiple ways for your donors to interact with you and to transfer money in ways that are natural to them in their everyday life? So kind of pull all those strings together for us into sort of what the tapestry that you're seeing right now and looking into the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's many more touch points, and many of them are now digital, and they haven't. There's just so many, and pulling them together, I think, is a real key piece of it. And I think that there's challenges that come along with that, and there's sort of a data chaos that can sort of emerge where you're interacting with somebody over here on social media, somebody here, for a volunteer opportunity, and somebody else on your Giving Tuesday campaign, and trying to pull them together and reconcile them all as one individual is certainly one challenge. But I think that that's something where I see a lot more organizations looking to focus on kind of reconciling it to get to that one ID, that one constituent record, so that you can see the full spectrum. And I think that that's a big piece of it, is really to understand that tapestry, I think, is a good word of what an individual is doing and contributing. Mm-hmm. One thing that I see in talking with many organizations about almost like a fishbone analysis of what is working, and as over the years you probably see some campaigns kind of growing and others going the other direction, and it's understanding what are the drivers behind that. And so being able to dig into that information a bit deeper about, okay, this event or this campaign is growing, let me dig in and understand what's the cohort, which donors are growing, how are they doing it. And so it's really having that next layer of insight into what's driving the up or the down. And I find that a lot of times it's very challenging to put the systems in place so that you can get that level of insight. And I think that's really where a lot of the power comes, to understand what are the things that are driving different campaigns one way or the other. So that fishbone analysis is what we've called it.
I think that's important. I'm going to bring in our next guest, and Mark, if you'd like to stay there, because I think this dovetails this whole topic about data and use of data. One guest that we've had on a regular basis here on the Nonprofit Coach is Rob Mitchell, CEO of the Atlas of Giving, and Rob has certainly taken to a whole new level the crunching of data, the identification of data, and then creating that into a framework that can not only be available for nonprofit executives, but in a regularly updated, user-friendly format. So, Rob Mitchell, welcome here to the big 8th anniversary Nonprofit Coach Show.
Thank you, Ted.
Rob, we've got Mark Sutton here from Frontstream, and we were just sort of talking about data and sort of the topic of data in the nonprofit sector. This seems like a perfect entree to bring you in here because your organization has really taken that to an art form, but made it, as I said before, user friendly. So, Rob, please welcome here to the show and sort of chime in on that topic.
Well, data is everything, but in terms of celebrating the 8th year anniversary of this show, I would like to focus on the success of this show.
Oh, thank you.
Which is you, Ted. You have spent more than 3 decades being a nonprofit giant, or becoming a nonprofit giant. You're a dad, and you have a son who is following you in the nonprofit leadership world.
Very proud
You're
of that.
the author of 6 books.
And let's not forget, I have a wonderful daughter who is doing wonderful things in the world as an actress in Los Angeles as well. So let's as long as we're mentioning my children, let's get them both in there.
Let's do, because I have one of my 4 children is a performer, actress, screenwriter as well, and so I think that's lovely. But I think the highest compliment is that your son is following you in your nonprofit activities, and I think that's terrific.
Well,
You've
been
the author of 6 very effective books. You are also a full-time CEO.
Yes.
You are if you will allow me, you're a networker extraordinaire. You know the people in this industry and this business, and I say business because it is a business. Many people consider the nonprofit world not a business, but it truly is. We're talking about billions of dollars, and you have become a leader and a networker extraordinaire. I also know that you have a fondness for sushi, which I share, and
you do your homework. You do your homework.
You're also a single malt Scotch
this is
aficionado
true. This
in
is
your
true.
off time. I'm gonna switch roles with you, Ted.
All right.
I'm going to become the interviewer instead of the interviewee.
All right.
And my biggest question for you, given all the things that you have going on, and there are a lot, there are personal issues, there are issues regarding being the CEO of CAF, there are there are a lot of issues, but my question for you is, what is your motivation with the nonprofit coach to give us the tools that we all need to be more successful and informed?
Well, thank you for asking that and turning the tables here. I do want to get back to your data as well, but the reason for the nonprofit coach is that, I started my career working with some very small organizations with very small budgets, and yet I've always felt that, as you said, whether we call it an industry or not, we certainly, I think, would agree that nonprofit organizations should be run professionally. Certainly, donors expect there to be unimpeachable audit trail and professional management of their funds, professional management of the programs that donors entrust their funds with. And yet, many nonprofits simply do not have the resources to be able to access the very best and brightest minds in the nonprofit sector. And we're blessed in this sector to have a couple things. One is we have top experts who have spent their careers. Many of them are on this show. You included. Mark is still with us here. We've got several other folks that are going to join us today, and many others that Diane Peach schedules here on the show. And our goal, Diane's and my goal in putting the show together, is to make available those resources that many nonprofits cannot afford, but yet they need. And they need to know what's happening around them. That sometimes they maybe cannot see the forest for the trees, but at the same time they are part of a larger ecosystem called sort of the nonprofit sector, that we want them to be able to understand what's happening around us and to succeed. And so we brought forth the nonprofit coach 8 years ago as a forum to bring people like yourself, like Mark and the others that are on this show throughout the year, to make them available. And then beyond those that are on the show and the kind of insight and resource that you folks bring, but at tedhart.com we make the podcast available every day, available for free, which gives to the nonprofit sector a free resource on the best tips, the most up-to-date information in the nonprofit sector. And that's part of my desire to give back to the sector, but to also do my part to sort of continue this drumbeat of it's not acceptable to be anything less than professional. It's not acceptable to be anything less than donor-driven. And that, while there may be other forces at work in the nonprofit sector, this is a place where we want to make sure people can come to sort of find that center again. So, Rob, I hope that answers your question. As you know, I keep a close eye out on the clock here. So Mark Sutton is still with us, and he had put on the table this issue of data. And the Atlas of Giving is a place where you regularly monitor. How many different data points do you monitor on a monthly basis?
More, almost 1 million points of data.
Okay, and so there even large nonprofits, but certainly the small nonprofits in this country cannot possibly hope to even be aware of those data points, but to bring them together and to make sense. And what you try to do is to, on a regular sort of real-time basis, help us understand where is philanthropy, where is it going, what are those key indicators, what are those things that we can look at throughout our community. So not just the sort of the leading indicators, but what are those things that will make a difference for nonprofit organizations. So quickly, as we look to bring our next guest in, and we're going to sort of keep the table going here, so everybody that can stay, please do. Tell us, what are you currently seeing in the Atlas of Giving?
Well, what we see is giving growth, and giving growth, no surprise to you, is largely led by donor-advised funds. And as you well know, the Fidelity Gift Fund has taken the place of number one in
the Philanthropy 400. Yeah, they surpassed United Way worldwide 2 years ago. They are now the number one charity. Share with us, because you do this crystal ball, what are you seeing in terms of the growth of philanthropy? Is it vibrant? Is it slowing? Are there any storms on the horizon? What are you seeing in the Atlas of Giving right now?
Well, right now what we're seeing is that growth is continuing, and it is linked to the stock market and real estate values primarily. But there is uncertainty, obviously, politically. Yep. And so those are things we're watching, and but I think that the growth in the economy, the growth in consumer confidence, the growth in there are fewer unemployed people than have been unemployed in more than 8 years, and that is a contributing factor toward expected giving growth. What we also see is that the organizations, especially the large traditional, and by that I mean those that have been around for 80 or 100 years, are less likely to accept the fact that digital fundraising is a major factor, and
so slow adoption.
You discussed that on your discussed that on your show.
We have, Rob. I'm gonna ask you to hold that thought right now, because I don't want to get too far behind schedule. And we do have Stephen Nill joining the party here. Stephen Nill, founder and CEO of Charity Channel and Charity Channel Press. Stephen Nill, we've got Mark Sutton from Frontstream and Rob Mitchell from the Atlas of Giving with us, celebrating the big 8th anniversary show here on the Nonprofit Coach. So welcome back, Stephen Nill.
Ted, it's great. And has it really been 8 years?
It has been 8 years. Yeah.
Wow, time flies.
And we have our producer Diane Peach here with us to attest to that fact.
About that. Wow, it seems like just yesterday. I remember you were planning to launch the show. We talked about it, and I thought it sounded really great. And boy, it stood the test of time. You've had some of the really great people on.
Absolutely.
Present company accepted, actually, but
now
really
included.
Listening to it all
included, yeah, really good folks. Now, Steve, I before you I do want you to be able to say what you wanted to say about the 8th anniversary. But I just saw. Mark Sutton is here with us, and he was just mentioning that he has just come back from the AFP conference, which this year was held in New Orleans, and a little piece of data across my desk that 60% of the books in the AFP International Conference bookstore come from Charity Channel Press. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was actually surprised myself. The way we found out about it was we got a panicked call on Sunday morning from the conference bookstore saying, do you have the tracking information? We can't find your books. And of course, I panicked too, but they soon found them, and they said we were really worried. You have 60% of the books at the conference, and we couldn't find them. And I hadn't realized that we had that many books there. I knew we had a good presence. We ship a lot of books to the conference, but that was one of those aha moments that I'm really savoring, because we've come a long way in the few years that we've been publishing, and I'm really proud of that. Actually, I'm quite humbled by it too.
Well, congratulations on that. Now, Rob Mitchell, when he was being so kind to share a little bit of my background, so he sort of took over being host for a few minutes. One of the things that he mentioned is that which I appreciated the break, but he mentioned that I had authored 6 books, and he said that those were helpful books in the industry. And we're not going to go into any detail here because we're not officially launching it until next month. But to let our listeners know that with Charity Channel Press, I've just finished book number 7, which will be on international grant making. So watch for the details of the official launch, which will be launched in May, with the official launch event being in Washington, D.C. on June 6th. But Steve, that's going to add another title to your growing number of books, and 60% at a conference for the Association of Fundraising Professionals. That's a lot.
Well, I'm just very pleased at our growth, and I was really happy to work with you and your team and getting that book ready for the launch. It's a great book. I don't want to steal the thunder of the launch, but let's let that thunder come at its time, right? Yeah. I'm just super excited. It's a great book, and it's one I'm very proud to say is published by Charity Channel Press. I think that it's going to be very well received, and I'm just looking forward to the day when we can announce it and launch it.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
Well, thank you for your help. Now, so in sort of the spirit of the 8th anniversary show here, Mark and Rob were sort of sharing with us sort of their thoughts over that period of time. Certainly in the titles that you're covering, the topics that are hot, what's selling, what the industry is looking for, you've seen a big change. Can you give us a sort of an insight into what's hot in the nonprofit sector, what stays hot, what's new? Because, again, you have so many different titles. You're literally on the edge of what people need. Well,
first of all, a book on international giving is desperately needed. A credible book from the top experts in the field is one that has been lacking, and you've written that book along with your colleagues who have joined you in writing that, and so that's that. I think that's a great example of our fulfilling our mission, which is to look at where the gaps are in books for nonprofit practitioners and try to fill that gap. Because the last thing we want to do is just put one more book out on a topic that's been beaten to death.
Right.
So your book is a great example of something that really needed to be written. Thank you for that, by the way. That was
you're welcome.
Great
what are the hot topics? What's selling right now? Which I would take as an indication of where the industry is at. What titles, what topics are moving.
Well, it's actually the topics haven't really changed of what the demand is. One of the best-selling books, our best-selling books, tend to be on the topic of major gifts. Nonprofits seem to just continue to crave books on that, and so every title we've ever put out has done extremely well. But also books that go to sort of the character and quality and skill sets of practitioners do well. And we recently put out a book. In fact, it just came out, Zen in the Art of Fundraising, 8 Pillars of Success, by Alexandra Pia-Brovy, who you probably know is an attorney, also a black belt in karate. And that book exemplifies our effort, anyway, to to look and see what can we put out that just isn't being done. It's not the everyday run-of-the-mill book, and what would be fun to read. And you could read her book in a weekend, but it may take a lifetime to really absorb the lessons that she gives in that. It's really quite an amazing book. I think, have you had her on your show, or she is scheduled soon, as I recall?
Yeah, a great topic. Great topic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's scheduled for your show, if I'm not mistaken. So if anyone listening
Diane,
gets a chance,
Diane, are you with us? Do you have the insight into that?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think you're right.
In the fall.
Yeah, she'll be back with us in the fall.
Well, anyway,
so,
she's a really interesting person to work with, and I think she would make a great guest if you choose to have her.
Well, Diane's going to make sure she books it far enough out so I can brush up on my karate before I have her on. I'll make sure I can hold my own.
Yeah, she's not anyone to trifle with.
Right, I want to make sure I can hold my own on that show.
Well, actually, we have her on the show right after we come back from hiatus.
So she'll be back in September. So she'll be the first guest. So I've got the whole summer, Steve, to brush up and to be fit for that show. So good. I've got a couple months. Good.
Fortunately, she's a very kind-hearted person.
That's good. So maybe you're saying maybe she'll be nice to me anyway. Okay, well that's good. Steve, I'm gonna ask you to stay with us as well. We're just filling up the table here. We're going to have our next guest. Nill Galliford is joining us. Nill is the CEO of Stephen Thomas up in Toronto. But I think for our purposes here, most importantly, he is the co-host that I co-host with him, the Digital Leap Conference, which will be held actually next week in Toronto on April 24th. And Nill, it sold out so early this year. Huge success, very big topic. Welcome here, Nill Galliford, to the big 8th anniversary show.
Well, thank you very much, Ted, and hello from New Orleans. I just spent the last few days at the AFP conference, a wonderful conference, but I'm looking forward to our little one-day conference in Toronto next week. So, yeah, it's been great, Ted. Congratulations on your 8th anniversary, and we've worked together on this joint venture of Digital Leap now for 9 years. 9
years, the 9th anniversary, right?
And
yeah,
that's correct. So, no, it's been a great 9 years, and your leadership in the conference has been much appreciated, and we've been able to create really the only conference in Canada that focuses solely on digital communications and fundraising for the not-for-profit sector. So, the fact that we sold out the last 3 to 4 years in a row just tells you that people are hungry to learn about how to apply digital techniques in the not-for-profit sector.
Now we have sold out for the last 4 years, but I think we were all surprised at how early in the planning process it sold out this year. What do you, Nill, attribute that to? And I just want to sort of remind our listeners of who else we sort of have on our 8th anniversary panel here. Mark Sutton is here with us from Frontstream, and Rob Mitchell is here, CEO of the Atlas of Giving. Steve Nill from Charity Channel Press is with us, and of course our producer of the show, Diane Peach, is here with us. So, Nill, why is Digital Leap so successful? What are the topics that are going to be covered that are resonating so well in the nonprofit sector?
Well, I think we've really kept our eye on the ball each year and delivered real value. We get speakers from big agencies, vendors, from consultancies, and from practitioners as well. So the opening plenary this year is the CEO of Plan Canada, Caroline Riseborough, and she's talking about the death of charity, which I think that'll be an interesting topic for sure.
Provocative at the very least.
We cover, at least, yes, and we cover real practical topics, how to make the best of your email program, to controversial topics like that. We've always tried to make it a mix of real practical take-home technique-oriented sessions and also a bit higher level, thought-provoking, challenging, if not provocative topics as well. So I think we got a good mix. It's a one-day conference. People like Mark Sutton, who's on the line, thank you, Mark, have supported our conference with Frontstream being a sponsor for a number of years. And the sponsors have allowed us to keep the price down so that in a practical way, charities can afford to send their people to the conference. So I think we got a good formula, and we've done well. And obviously, we've been at it 9 years, and I'm looking forward to our 10th anniversary next year.
Yeah, so am I. So relating to this big 8th anniversary of the Nonprofit Coach, can you sort of share with our listeners sort of the evolution that you've seen of the topics of Digital Leap in terms of how has the industry changed over, now you and I have been doing that program for 9 years, but certainly the 8 years that the Nonprofit Coach has sort of been side by side, the topics that have changed over that period of time and maybe the sophistication of even small nonprofits.
Well, I think what's interesting is that there was a lot of interest early on in things which weren't really producing a lot of revenue, and I think that made the whole area a bit challenging. And I think that was true generally about digital fundraising. It's been growing over the last few years in leaps and bounds, but it still represented a relatively small proportion of the revenue that charities were bringing in. And I think what's happened over the last 9 years is that revenue has started to grow to the point where it's an investable activity, and organizations are realizing that if they're not there and they're not doing it well, they're going to be left behind. Mm-hmm. The legacy systems were still producing the bulk of the revenue, and still are, I guess. But now digital, the money's there, right? The money's starting to be there, and so now we're seeing a bit more confidence in that end of things.
Yeah, and let me bring Mark in here. So in that sort of period of time, what we're seeing is sort of the marriage of legacy systems to digital systems and how the interplay between the two. And I think over the 8 years that this show has been on, we've seen it as sort of a curiosity that then became sort of a standalone or sort of a bolted onto the side to now, true integration of online, offline, and the expectation on the part of donors that these things are not separate. They don't live in different spheres, but are just all part of the donor experience. Is that what you're seeing? Is that how you would describe the evolution over that time? Mark, are you here? Oh, maybe I don't.
But Mark's not.
Okay. Well, Neil, go ahead.
He's gone. I would take that on. Yeah.
Oh, Mark is here. Mark is here. I think he had us on mute.
Apologies. No, I was gonna chime in and say I think absolutely that is how we've seen it. I think that what we're seeing is certainly a multi-channel approach is no longer just something that has to be. Mm-hmm. Has to be part of the mix. And I think that we're all seeing response rates and open rates with emails just going down to the point where I think it's very problematic if that is, if that's kind of the sole way that you're interacting with individuals. It has to be via social, text, I think even Facebook Messenger. So that multimedia approach is absolutely right. And then I think that the other thing that sort of stood out is, Neil, as you were talking about kind of the evolution, and I remember talking, a number of years ago at Digital Leap about mobile, and I find similar to the comment I made when I was speaking earlier, with any of these, there's sort of that first, you've got the early adopters that jump in. They don't understand exactly necessarily why things are being done, but they do know that social or mobile or email or online, has possibility. And there's a leap of faith, or perhaps a pretty good bet. People then become pretty good practitioners at using those. And then I think it matures to the state where you really need to prove the ROI. And I think that's where the metrics and the data comes in. It says, okay, what is mobile, or what is social, or what is my online channel doing for me? And it's no longer just okay to be a good idea. It really has to be accountable at the ROI level for each organization.
And the expectation on the part of the donors. I think you're right. I mean, you'll get the early adopter charities who have the resources and are looking for sort of where that cutting edge is. And then they're able to sort of connect to early adopter donors, because there's a donor base out there that also wants to have that sort of early experience. And so they sort of meet each other exactly where they need to be. But that's a small group of charities, and it's a small group of donors. And the challenge is, how do you integrate these tools into a community that does not see itself as an early adopter, but has now adopted digital, has now adopted mobile as part of their everyday life. And it's not just digital for charity or mobile for charity. It doesn't, in a lot of donors' minds, stand alone or stand apart. It is part of their lives, and if you can't meet them there, someone else will. And I think that what's really changed over these 8 years is the intense competition for technology and the intense competition between charities to create that donor experience that can be sticky enough to actually, as you said, Mark, create an ROI.
I think it becomes almost I think that there's an expectation on the part of the donor now. If you think back 8 years ago, people weren't buying things on Amazon and on Facebook, and people's lives weren't online nearly to the extent that they are today. So by virtue of the fact that this is how people are living their lives more regularly outside of their nonprofit and philanthropic engagement, the expectation is such that the experience is going to be very similar.
Right, and if you're not, then quite honestly, you can have a very good cause, you can have a very good message, but you are going to be sort of left by the side of the road, because those who can adopt, and it doesn't even have to be quickly adopt. I mean, one of the things I try to share with charities, it's a matter of integrating into what already works. And my fear, and one of the things that we've always sort of warned people about here on this show, is you read about some great cause in the paper, or you share with people, or you learn about how they did something in a particular way, and then you try to replicate that rather than taking a look at organically or historically what's happening for your organization, and how can you now make that same experience more relevant? How can you bring that experience to where your donors are naturally? And of course, it's always nice to go find new donors, and it's great to always prospect to grow your base. But that's also very expensive. And to maintain those relationships and to build those relationships over time, I think is where charities should be placing their emphasis, because that in and of itself is harder. Again, because of the competition in either same fields or related fields, charities are feeling that competition. And, technology is a whole lot cheaper now than it was when this show started. But it nonetheless is an investment. So I'm kind of throwing that out there to all of our guests. If there's anybody who wants to respond to that or tell me I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, Ted, I'll say you're right. It is an investment. The prices have come down, but I also feel like maybe what you meant by investment is it's not just a financial investment, but it's also an investment in resource and skill set and commitment, even at the executive level, to embracing this. So
yeah. I think even more so. I think even more so at the executive level. I think early on, certainly early on for the show, early on in the use of digital technology, mobile technology, it was okay for, almost for the tail to wag the dog, that there would be, some, typically it would be pointed out to be some young person who was on the staff who was sort of trying to push the organization, to use new tools. And that was great. And thankfully, that happened and that message got across. But I think now it's very important that from the executive suite on down, that the use of smart technology, the integration of technology into more traditional forms of fundraising has to be a message from the top that you cannot succeed today to the level that you need to if it's a small department or one or two people that are trying to push technology into an organization. You're just not going to meet the challenge of 2018.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've observed, both at our company, Frontstream, as well as many of the organizations that we work with, is sometimes that can be scary to executive leadership because maybe you're not as familiar, you haven't grown up with all of the digital tools, and sometimes the feeling is that you need to be the leader in driving these. And what I found in our company is sometimes it's just getting out of the way.
Yep.
And it's letting some of the millennials who are like, let's use Trello or Slack or let's try this, something that I believe kind of is intriguing, but I don't necessarily know all the X's and O's myself. Sometimes it's just saying, go run with it. Let's see what happens.
That's right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so whether it's getting out of the way or empowering people to utilize and explore technology, that's where I think senior executives need to get to. So we're going to go in, bring in our last guest here, who is Kay Sprinkel Grace is here with us, and Kay, I'm sure that our producer Diane Peach, who is with us here, so she can speak for herself if she would like to. But you always do our holiday show at the end of the year, and we thank you for that. It's always one of the top-rated shows each year. So I imagine that's probably why Diane has asked you to be our last guest here on the big 8th anniversary show. So welcome back here, Kay Sprinkel Grace.
Thank you, Ted, and congratulations on another amazing year of Blog Talk Radio. You continue to, lead our profession in so many ways, and I know for me it has just been a great joy to have known and worked with you over decades now, I think, Ted. Oh, my goodness.
We have been working together for a long time. We've got several folks sort of around the table here. I'll just share with you who's here. Mark Sutton is with us from Frontstream. Rob Mitchell from the Atlas of Giving. Steve Nill is here from Charity Channel Press. Nill Galliford, who is my wonderful co-host of Digital Leap next week in Toronto, and the CEO, Stephen Thomas. And, of course, our producer here of the show, Diane Peach, is joining us because it's our anniversary show. So, Kay, we're all kind of weighing in on the last 8 years in philanthropy and sort of the passage of time and changing of topics. Weigh in on that topic from the seat of Kay Sprinkel Grace.
Well, it's a time, Ted, that reminds me of 10 years ago when I was the lead outside consultant to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for the Major Giving Initiative. And in our leadership training with CEOs, we asked them to imagine 10 years forward. Like, what would it be 10 years forward? What's your vision? What will it look like in your public media company 10 years from now? And I remember one person saying, how can I even think of that? When 10 years ago, our big breakthrough was getting a plain paper fax. So what I'm seeing is that there is just this massive acceleration. But what is intriguing to me is that it's not our industry, for want of a better word, our profession that is accelerating. In fact, I wish it were accelerating more. It is our donors, it is the needs in our communities, and I am more and more engaged in the design thinking around philanthropy. I think that we have created far more organizations than we have solved problems. And I think that we are heading for a time when we will be better aligned with the expectations of our donors, with the needs of our community, and the capacity of our organizations. My other concern is leadership succession. Many organizations are reaching a point where, founders and founding boards and a lot of our boards are still reflective of a time when their communities looked a lot different. And I think it's a very exciting time. I think it's a time when thoughtful professionals like you have gathered around that table are going to be called on for not only action but for wisdom.
And how can all of these topics come together in a way that doesn't have to be threatening, doesn't have to be in your face, if in fact you can see, even not quite 10 years, but just over the horizon, to see, as Kay Sprinkel Grace so often brings to us here, what is on that horizon, and what do we need to do now to prepare for that, so that we're not caught unawares, that we're not caught off guard as these topics, because it is important to understand that our communities are becoming more diverse, yet are our charities reflecting that, as leadership reflecting that. Just as Mark and Nill and I have shared, have talked about the integration of digital technology, mobile technology, web technology. Those things have changed, and the reason that they've changed is because communities have changed, and people, our donors, want to come together in different ways. And we have Rob Mitchell here with the Atlas of Giving, who is constantly, and he just shared with us, they're looking at 1 million data points on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, to understand what is driving philanthropy, what are those indicators that are going to tell us what the future will look like in a way that can be understood, that we're not just caught, again, unawares, that like philanthropy doesn't just happen. It is an outgrowth of the communities that we reflect, and I think, Kay, that's the point that you're bringing us all home to.
It is, and I think that I cannot obviously I don't have a solution up my sleeve, but what I do have is I have this notion that we have so much to offer our communities. We as philanthropic organizations, we have experience, we have wisdom, we have trust, we have everything going for us. And we need to take a stronger leadership role, not in solving the problem ourselves, because this is not an alone time. This is a together time. And we need to be conveners. We need to bring the people in who can solve the problem with us. And we need to work across corporations and associations and community foundations and foundations, all the things that you do so well, Ted. But we need to convene them and say, how can we solve this problem? What resources do we need? What are the mobilizing instincts that we have? And what are our messages? How are we going to present this? And Ted knows me well enough to know and so does Nill and a few others that are around that table, is that I believe that people give to us because we meet needs, not because we have needs.
That's right.
And yet too often our messages are about the needs that we have. And particularly in times of economic volatility, it's all about the needs we have. But what are the needs that we're meeting? How often do we really say to people, look, this is what we've done, but more than that, this is what we, working together with you and others in this community, we don't own philanthropy.
That's right.
We lead it.
That's right.
But we don't have to own it.
And Kay, one of the things
that shared service.
That's right. And one of the things that has distinguished all of our work here, and I want to thank you all for being my guest here on the big 8th anniversary show for the Nonprofit Coach, is that we listen and that we bring our experiences and our expertise to the table, but we don't demand that we have all the answers. And I think that's the secret sauce of philanthropy, is that we're able to be active in our communities, listen into our communities and to help fashion solutions that are relevant to our communities, whether that's online, offline, or in your backyard. So everyone, I want to thank you, Mark Sutton, Rob Mitchell, Steve Nill, Neil Galliford, Kay Sprinkel Grace, and of course our dear Diane Peach, our producer of the show. Thank you for helping us celebrate today the 8th anniversary of the Nonprofit Coach.
Thank you, Frank.
You're listening to the Nonprofit Coach Radio Show with Ted Hart. Tell your friends to check out our production schedule and download our iPod and iPad friendly podcast at tedhart.com. Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Coach.